Hi everybody, welcome to Hive Reads. This month I am reading a short story from a collection called Monstrous Affections, an anthology of beastly tales. I have the ebook version. This is edited by Kelly Link and Gavin G. Grant. And the story I want to read is called 10 Rules for Being an Intergalactic Smuggler, the Successful Kind, by Holly Black. Okay. Number 1, there are no rules. That's what your uncle tells you after he finds you stowing away in his transport ship, the Solaris, which you used to call the Celery when you were growing up, back when you only dreamed of getting off the crappy planet your parents brought you to as a baby. No matter how many times you told them their dream of being homesteaders and digging in the red dirt wasn't yours, no matter how many times you begged your uncle to take you with him, even though your parents swore that he was a smuggler and bad news, it wasn't until you climbed out of your hidey hole with the vastness of space and the transparent aluminum windows behind you that anyone really believed you'd meant any of it. Once you're caught, your uncle gives you a long lecture about how there are laws and there's right and wrong, but those aren't rules. And he says there are especially no rules for situations like this, which turns out to be to your advantage, because he's pissed, but not that pissed. His basic philosophy is to laugh in the face of danger, and also in the face of annoyance. And since he thinks his brother is a bit of a damp rag, and likes the idea of being a hero to his niece, it turns out that no rules means not turning around and dumping you back on Mars. He also turns out to be a smuggler. Grudgingly, you have to admit that your parents might not be wrong about everything. Number 2, spaceports are dangerous. Your uncle tells you this several times as you dock in the Zvezda 9 spaceport, but it's not like you don't know it already. Your parents have told you a million stories about how alien races like the spidery and psychopathic Charkazaks, fugitives after their world was destroyed by interplanetary forces, take girls like you hostage and force you to do things so bad they won't even describe them. From all your parents' warnings about spaceports, when you step off of Solaris, you expect a dozen shady aliens to jump out of the shadows, offering you morality-disrupting powders, fear inhibitors, and nucleus accumbens stimulators. Except, it turns out that spaceports aren't that interesting. Zvezda 9 is a big stretch of cement tunnels, vast microgravity farms, hotel pods, and general stores with overpriced food that's either dehydrated or in a tube. There are also interplanetary offices where greasy-looking people from a variety of worlds wait in long lines for licenses. They all stare at your homespun clothes. You want to grab your uncle's hand, but you already feel like enough of a backworld yokel, so you curl your fingers into a fist instead. There are aliens. Wasn't like your parents were wrong about that. Most of them look human and simultaneously inhuman. And the juxtaposition is so odd, you can't keep from staring. You spot a woman whose whole lower face is a jagged toothed mouth. A man with gray-skinned cheeks that grow from his face like gills or possibly just really strange ears loads up a hovercraft nearby. The stripes on his body are smeared, so you know they're paint, not pigmentation. Someone passes you in a heavy, hairy cloak, and you get the impression of thousands of eyes inside the hood. It's creepy. You do not, however, see a single Charkazak, and no one offers you any drugs. Stop acting stupid, your uncle growls, and you try to act less stupid and keep from staring. You try to act like you stroll around spaceports all the time, like you know how to use the gun that you swiped from your mom and strapped to your thigh under your skirt. Like the tough expression you plaster on your face actually makes you tough. You try to roll your hips and swagger, like you're a grown lady, but not too much of a lady. Your uncle laughs at you, but it's a good kind of laughter. Like, at least you're sort of maybe pulling it off. Later that night, he buys you some kind of vat meat tacos, and he and some of his human transporter buddies get to drinking and telling stories. They tell you about run-ins with space pirates and times when the interplanetary centurions stopped their ships looking for illicit cargo. Your uncle has so many stories about narrow getaways, and hidey holes, in addition to a large cast of seedy accomplices able to forge passable paperwork, but who apparently excel at getting him into dangerous yet hilarious situations. You laugh your way into the night. The next day, your uncle buys you a pair of black pants and a shirt like his, made from a self-cleaning material that's insulating, plus a shiny chromium steel clip for your hair. You can't stop smiling. And although you don't say it out loud to him, in that moment, you're sure that the two of you are going to be the greatest smuggling duo ever. Number 3. When someone says they'll pay double your normal rate, they're offering to pay at least half what you'd charge them if you knew the whole story. The Solaris stays docked in the spaceport for just a couple of weeks, while your uncle buys some used parts to repair the worst of wear and tear to her systems and looks for the right official job, and then an unofficial job to make the most of the interplanetary transport license. You try to keep out of your uncle's way so he doesn't start thinking of you as some kid who's always underfoot. You don't want to get sent back home. Instead, you hang around the spaceport, trying to make yourself less ignorant. You go into the store that sells navigational charts and stare at the shifting patterns of stars. You go into the pawn shop and look at the fancy laser pistols and the odd alien gadgets until the guy behind the counter gets tired of your face and orders you to buy something or get out. After a while, the spaceport seems less scary. Some of your uncle's friends pay you pocket money to run errands, money that you use to buy calf bars and extra batteries for the gun and holographic hoop earrings that you think make you look like a pirate. Just when you start to feel a little bit cocky and comfortable, your uncle informs you that it's time to leave. He's lined up the jobs. He found a client. A small man with a red face and red hair sits in their eating area on the ship, sipping Archer ethanol, booze culled from the Sagittarius B2 cloud, out of a coffee can. The man tells your uncle that he supplies alien tissue to a scientist who has his lab on one of the outer worlds, where the rules about gene splicing and cloning are a little bit more lax. The small man has come across a particularly valuable shipment of frozen alien corpses and needs it to get where it's going fast, with few questions asked. The assignment creeps you out, but you can tell that your uncle has been distracted by the ridiculously high offer the man is waving around. It's more money than you've ever imagined being paid for anything. And even with the cost of fuel and bribing Centurions, you're pretty sure there would be enough to refit the Solaris in style. No more used parts, no more stopgap repairs. He could have all new everything. Half now, the man says. Half when the cargo arrives, intact. And they better get there inside a month, or I will take the extra time out of your hide. I'm paying for speed and silence. Oh, it'll be there, your uncle says, and pours a little Archer ethanol into a plastic cup for himself. Even the smell of it singes your nose hair. This little ship has got hidden depths, literally. He grins while he's speaking, like the offer of so much money has made him drunker than all the booze in the sky. Hidden depths, like me. The red-haired man doesn't seem all that impressed. You have lots of questions about where the alien bodies came from and what exactly the scientist is going to do with them. But a quick glance from your uncle confirms that you're supposed to swallow these and just keep pouring drinks. You have your guesses. You've heard stories about space pirates with alien parts grafted on instead of their own. New ears, new eyes, new second stomachs tough enough to digest acid, second livers and new teeth and organs humans don't even have, like poison glands or hidden quills. And then there were worse stories, ones about cloned hybrids, pitiless and monstrous enough to fight the surviving Charkazaks and win. But you're a stupid kid from a backward planet and you know it, so you quash your curiosity. After the client leaves, you clean up some and fold your stuff so it tucks away in the netting over the bunk in your room. You go down to the cargo hold and move around boxes so the way to the secret storage compartment is clear for when the redhead comes back with his alien parts in the morning. That night, you look out through the transparent aluminum windows at ship's docking on Zvezda 9, and you get excited about leaving for your first mission in the morning. But in the morning, the Solaris doesn't depart. It turns out that it takes time to get ready for a run like this. It takes supplies and paperwork, charting a course and new fuel and lots of batteries and a ton of water. The whole while you careen between sadness over leaving Zvesta 9, now that you've become familiar with it, and wishing that you were just in space already. You visit your favorite spots, unsure if you'll ever see them again, and you pace the halls of the Solaris at night, until your uncle orders you to your bunk. His temper is a short sparking fuse. He sends you to buy supplies, and then complains loudly about what you get, even though you're the one who'll be doing the reheating and reconstituting. The client arrives in the middle of the night. You sit in the shadows above the cargo bay and watch what he loads. A long, cylindrical casket, big enough for several humans. Smoke curls off of it when it's jostled, as though it is very, very cold inside. An hour later, you're back among the stars. There, your uncle starts to relax, as though space is his real home, and being on a planet for too long was what was making him tense. Over the next week, he teaches you a few simple repairs he has to do regularly for the Solaris, shows you a few of his favorite smuggling hidey holes, teaches you a card game, and then how to cheat at that card game, and even lets you fly the ship for an hour, with him hanging over your shoulder, nagging you about everything you're doing wrong. Considering that he turns on autopilot while he sleeps, letting you put your hands on the controls while he watches isn't that big of a vote of confidence, but sitting in the cockpit, gazing out at the spray of stars, makes you feel important and wholly yourself, as though all your time laboring in that red dirt was worth something, because it brought you to this. Mostly, the trip is uneventful, except for an evening when your uncle comes up from the cargo hold and won't look at you. He downs a whole bottle of Archer ethanol, and then gets noisily sick while you watch the computer navigate and fiddle with your earrings. He never says what set him off, but the next day he's himself again, and you both try to pretend that it never happened. Then you wake up, because the whole ship is shaking. At first you think you're passing through an asteroid field, but then you realize something bad is happening. There's a faint smell of fire, and the sound of the ship venting it. Then the gravity starts going crazy, lurching on and off, bouncing you against the floor and the walls. Once it stabilizes, you manage to crawl out into the corridor. Your heart is pounding like crazy, fear making you lightheaded. You clutch your mother's gun to you like it's some sort of teddy bear. They're shouting, voices, more than there should be, on board. You think you hear your uncle calling your name, and then something else, something loud and anguished and final. You head automatically for the cockpit when a man runs into the corridor, skidding to a stop at the sight of you. Based on the mismatched array of weapons and armor, you figure he's got to be a pirate. If he was a centurion, he'd be in uniform. He reaches for his weapon, like he's just shaking off the shock of seeing a kid in her nightgown aboard a smuggling ship. But you've already swung your mother's gun up. You blast him in the head, before you allow yourself to consider what you're doing. When he drops, you start trembling all over. You think you're going to throw up, but you can hear more of them coming, so you try to concentrate on moving through the ship, remembering all the hidey holes your uncle pointed out to you. The lights go out, all of a sudden, so you have to feel your way into the dark. But soon you found one big enough for you to fit yourself into, and you shut up inside. Snug as a bug in a rug, your mom would say. You start crying, thinking about her. You know your uncle is probably dead, but you don't want to admit that to yourself just yet. So you pretend you're not thinking of him when you wipe away your tears. All right, I'm going to pause there. So we learned 3 rules, and we will pick back up with rule number 4, which is, if your ship gets raided by space pirates, don't hide in the cargo hold, because everybody wants what's in the cargo hold. All right, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.